Hello, everyone. We made it to episode 41. I know 41 doesn't sound like a magical number, but this will be the last episode we'll be releasing this year, so I thought it'd be nice to review some of my favorite moments from our first 40 episodes. Since we started working on this podcast almost a year ago, we've brought on a wide range of guests, including prominent self-advocates like Temple Grandin and Michael John Carley, autism parents like Eileen and Jamiel Owens, some of our Global Autism Project partners like Yaser Aljaaidi from Saudi Arabia and Sangeeta Jain from India, and other professionals in the field like Dr. Megan Miller and Robert and Nadine Schramm. If you've been with us for a while, this 2020 recap will bring you back to the heartfelt stories we've been hearing from our guests. And if this is your first time listening to us, welcome. This episode will help you get a good idea of what Autism Knows No Borders is all about. Either way, I hope that you're left feeling inspired to create some change in your own communities. In episode 1, which now feels like ages ago, we launched this show with a brief introduction of who I am and what the Global Autism Project is. Here's how I explained what this podcast means for our community.
This podcast is the voice of our global autism community. We'll be speaking with a wide variety of people impacted by autism, from family members and international service providers to autistic self-advocates who have something to share. Our aim is to transform how people relate to autism all across the world. Profound change happens when we're uncomfortable, and people who are familiar with our work know that we leap into discomfort daily. So we ask you to do the same. We'll be exploring controversial topics like ableism, international aid, volunteerism, and ABA's reputation amongst the actually autistic movement. Through shared stories of struggles and breakthroughs, we hope to extend the reach of human connection and remind people that they are not alone. We are not alone. You are not alone.
In episode 2, the CEO and founder of the Global Autism Project, Molly Ola Pinney, talked about the organization's history and mission. Listen to Molly explain what the phrase Autism Knows No Borders means to her.
I think I'm sure we'll talk a bit about how the organization got started, but really when I think about this idea of no borders, I think about something that impacts you wherever in the world you live, that, you only have to be, I get emails all the time at 2 and 3 in the morning. So no borders in terms of the time of day. It's not like it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and all the continents of the world, and all the countries of the world, and all the corners of the world. And so I think there's that, but there's this idea that people, that the autistic community can only accomplish so much, and we're breaking out of it. I've been doing this for 17 years, so we're breaking out of that idea. But when I think about no borders, I also think about in terms of potential, in terms of what's possible for people with autism. And that's really, for me, that's really the aspect of our that's really the aspect of our motto that resonates more. It's sort of there's no borders, and there's no borders to what's possible.
Episode 3 featured Eileen, an autistic self-advocate whose son is also on the spectrum. Eileen is a writer, photographer, and host of a blog called The Autism Cafe, where she posts articles and resources for parents. Here's Eileen discussing the myths of ABA therapy and opening up about how hard it's been to receive online attacks from other self-advocates.
It's been so hard for me to deal with the hate online, especially because it comes from people who, after I was diagnosed, thought were going to be my friends because they're autistic too. And so to have them come at me because I put my son in ABA therapy, it's like I'm always doing something wrong in their eyes, in the way I advocate. What they say is that ABA is trying to take the autism away from the child. It's trying to make them normal, which is totally not what ABA is. ABA is here to help the child become independent and safe, and maybe to learn to communicate, to decrease the child's frustration. it's not because I want him to be normal. No, I just want him to have like the best shot possible at life, you know.
Episode 4 showcased 3 members of our SkillCorps community: Brittany Pay, Jesse Sheehan, and Andrew Bennett. SkillCorps is our volunteer program that allows professionals and self-advocates an opportunity to provide meaningful training to our partner autism centers around the world. Listen to Brittany, Jesse, and Andrew share what they've learned about cultural humility from going on SkillCorps trips.
You know, everybody says be culturally mindful, but I feel like sometimes here in the States, what that means is identify that it's from a different culture, but you're still imparting your cultural norms on them. Instead of saying, okay, I identify that you're from a different culture, and now that means I have to understand, I have to step in your shoes and look at it from your perspective and not force my cultural norms on you, but really work around what your culture says. And, you know, maybe the end result, we'd love to get PEC started for this child, but we're not going to go there right away. You know, how do we take our baby steps? How do I have conversations with you about what the benefits are, and listen to your conversation about your concerns or what that means, you know, to people in your culture. So I think a lot of that, you know, I think Global Autism does a good job. You know, you're taking people from the States pretty much and putting them in another culture, and that kind of shifts the understanding. You know, you're going to somebody else's country and you have to follow those norms. But here in the States, we're almost assuming that just because they're in the States, they should follow our cultural norms. And I think when we start to kind of twist that, there should be a better understanding and a better working relationship between what we're trying to accomplish and what they're willing to do.
Like Brittany said, like when you're going into these other countries, I've just had the experience where it's just so exciting and different and mind-opening, that I've been excited to kind of take it all in, and it feels so different that it just seems strange to think like, why would I think I'm so different in this setting? Like, why would what I think be the first thing that these people are thinking? Um, just that, I don't know, like each step of the way, like I think going in and being excited to learn from our partners and to take in what they know and value, um, and then be able to share from that space. And like I don't know, it seems almost like hard to think about doing it another way when you're in it. I think in at home, I think it does seem like an easier thing to have happen, where we might feel like we're the more dominant culture, like people should assimilate, I guess. But in country, I've just always been so excited, and it's just all, I don't know, it's so rich, and there's so many neat differences, um, in each partner site, that I just feel like being willing to kind of embrace that and to ask a lot of questions, and not make any assumptions when you're in a new place, um, really can go a long way.
What I wanted to cover with this question was what impact it had on the partners. They could really see that I'd made a lot of effort, and it also inspired a lot of the other team members to start asking questions, becoming more curious. It was also helpful because even though nobody else had learned the language, they were able to get more confident with using Google Translate to step out and use that to communicate with our partners who were not English speaking. Because historically, we hadn't really done that. We'd done translation through people who spoke English. But I think that that effort sparked a lot of effort from everybody else. And so we were hoping that that would mean that Katrine and Martin were going to feel a lot more included in the decision-making process rather than have a go-between all of the time. And it seemed at the end of our trip like we'd accomplished that objective. So I think that if you are the one that makes the first step towards another culture, they're the ones that are going to come back to you in return and really show their generosity, what they're about, and they'll be more willing to work with you. We actually did a few days of pairing before we really started working directly with them. And I think that's important to ensure a good communication is and mutual respect is established before you really start getting into the meat of things.
In episode 5, I was joined by one of our Global Autism Project partners, Michael Huang. Michael is the president and co-founder of U Plus Academy, an autism center in Nanjing, China. In this clip, Michael describes how the staff at U Plus incorporate technology to teach safety skills.
We use a 3D mapping room, and we use some, what do we call it, is a special camera. We just record some video in the downtown. And so we can just put everything back to our 3D mapping room. And then the teacher will let the child know that, if you, this is a traffic light, and when it turns green, that you can walk. So when it turns red, you should stop to wait. And that's real image. That will just help the child to learn before we put them to the real dangerous world.
In episode 6, Jain from Chandigarh, India, talked about her experiences as the older sister to a young man with autism, Suvrat. Here's Shreya sharing how she and her family educate their community about autism.
So I'll just give you an example. Every time I used to go out into the park and somebody would make fun of us, I would initially feel really, really bad about it. Mm-hmm. And then my mom said, why don't you tell them about it, right? Just tell them. And then you see what they say and what they do and how they behave. And I was shocked. I think that was like the earliest lesson that I learned about advocacy and awareness. Because the minute I told these young group of kids when I used to go to the park and told them that my brother has autism, he can't speak, but he's really good at kicking a ball and he's really good at cycling. These are the things that he can do with us. I think everybody went out of their way to help him, to like accept him, I remember all of us would go to pick him up from his evening classes together. So just talking about it, and when you put something out in the right way, it sort of helps people understand better. Mm-hmm. Even when we go to malls, even when we go to theaters, right? We always try and tell people around us. Before they make a face, before they assume the worst, we tell them that it's not anything bad, right? He just has autism. These are the things that you can expect, especially if we're going to be sitting next to you for 3 hours. You might as well know, right? Might as well learn. Instead of just like feeling uncomfortable for 3 hours, making us feel horrible for 3 hours. I'll tell you about it. I'll talk to you. So I think that's gone a really long way for us in terms of us feeling very comfortable with ourselves. Just saying that, hey, listen, don't freak out, don't get scared. He makes weird noises. He's very tall, but he means no harm and he's going to do no harm. So just relax, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And he might take your popcorn. Yeah, he might take your popcorn, but please hide it or please keep it on the other side at your own risk.
Yeah.
So everything. And, then you get, and then nobody's then that crazy to still like be like, oh no, we're not going to sit here. Because then you're not that like this thing, right? Mm-hmm. Then they have no option but to laugh about it and smile about it and be like, okay, no, it's fine,
Mm-hmm. Right, but
so then you see.
Episode 7 featured our partner, Mafer Chang, who is the founder of Centro Enigma, an autism center in Guayaquil, Ecuador. Like many of our partner sites, Mafer was forced to close her center for several months this year and transition to online services. Listen to Mafer's advice for parents who may be struggling during this challenging time.
Right now, the advice that I tell my parents is that to not feel down about what's happening right now, and to see the little steps that they can do with their kids at home. And even though it's like a very, very tiny thing, it can be a positive thing. So maybe try to look up things that they can work out as a family and go through as a family. And this is a good way of getting to actually know your kid, because we live in a world that we run around so much, we work so much, that I have seen how parents tell me in every session, online session, I didn't know he liked X, Y, and Z. I didn't know he smiled like this. I didn't know he would point like that. Or I didn't know he had this smile with his eyes. And I was like, inside of me, I was like, yes, I see that every day. But it's a good way of like them to first to understand their child, is not necessarily understanding autism. It's just getting to know your child. And from that on, there will be a lot of good things that they can come up with.
In episode 8, we brought Russell Lehman on the show. Russell is a motivational speaker, poet, author, and autistic self-advocate. This is Russell explaining how his struggles with mental health pushed him to become a social recluse at the age of 11.
It seemed like the harder I tried to be part of this world, the more I struggled because no one was willing to actually see me as a person. They saw me as my behavior. And it wasn't even like I was acting out. I was just crying most of the time, but for some reason they didn't like that. I ran into a lot of old school type of teachers and doctors where they thought I should just, toughen up, and that's not me. I pride myself as an adult on being authentic to my feelings, and especially with regards to mental health. I don't want to hide anything. I don't want to be pressured by society to be someone I'm not just because I struggle with my mental health. So that was very true back then too. I'm very authentic, and I would show my feelings, and a lot of them wouldn't take the time to, again, see me as a human. It wouldn't. The compassion I encountered was very lacking.
Episode 9 was a double feature with our partners from Nairobi, Kenya, Pooja Panesar and Brooke Jadida. Pooja is a board-certified behavior analyst, and Brooke is a speech therapist. As co-directors at Kaizora in Kenya and Tanzania, Pooja and Brooke discussed how they encourage multidisciplinary collaboration among their staff and how their leadership styles complement each other. Here's how Pooja and Brooke described the stigma surrounding autism in Kenya and Tanzania.
If you go into the rural areas, that's where you see more myths, and rather than looking into the medicine side of everything, there's more of the traditional healers. There's a lot of misconceptions around what autism is, around any developmental or mental disorder, actually. There's a lot of witchcraft and not a lot of witchcraft, sorry. There's a lot of misconceptions regarding witchcraft and black magic and those kind of things. So trying to dispel those myths and misconceptions is important in those areas.
Mm-hmm. And Brooke, would you say it's a similar understanding in Tanzania? And are these children ever in danger?
I would say yes, they are in danger, definitely. Even here in Kenya, some are, and especially in rural areas. We hear stories that traumatize us for sure. We'll have, I think recently there was, last year, I think there was a story of where they would actually believe that to cure autism and especially hyperactivity, they had to put this child in hot water. Wow. Until the child calms down, which of course that means when they calm down, they are dead. So yes, those beliefs, there's some traditional medication they give, which definitely might counter the effects of what is being given maybe, or what the child requires, which is not okay. So yes, there is a lot of danger for that. Mm-hmm. Back here, and also in Tanzania. And especially in Tanzania. Tanzania is well known to, people actually leave Kenya to go to Tanzania for traditional healers.
In episode 10, our CEO, Molly, came back on the show to announce our Partner Relief Fund. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been raising funds and sending them directly to our partners who needed them most, to ensure that their centers can stay open and continue to serve their communities.
So we're establishing the Partner Relief Fund that partners will then be able to apply for based on their need. And our organization will be working with a committee, including Skill Corps alums, including some donors, including people from other sectors of humanitarian work, so that we can create a committee to establish where the funds are needed most and where they'll be able to go. And then, I've gotten a lot of questions around what will the money be used for. And I think that the largest thing to know is that it will be used to make sure kids still have services. The most important thing right now is that services and learning continue. And not only important because kids need to learn all over the world, but important because this is a community of support that these families have created, have come to rely upon in good times and bad. And it's just so important that that community stays intact.
In episode 11, I spoke with Rachel Barcelona. Rachel is an autistic self-advocate, model, author, singer, actress, and pageant winner. She's also a Skill Corps alumni, having traveled with the Global Autism Project on a volunteer trip to the Czech Republic in 2018. Here's some of what Rachel had to say about the problem of masking among young girls, the Actually Autistic movement, and segregating people by labels.
So it's like you're putting on a happy face, you're hiding who you are, and you're trying to fit in with what people expect of you. And that was another thing that I really, really had to overcome, because I don't want to be like everyone else. I mean, who wants to do that? And unfortunately, I mean, this is why I'm here, because a lot of autistic girls, they don't get that. They've been taught to put on this mask and try to fit in with neurotypical society. And that's really not what I want to do. I just want to be colorful, be me, unapologetically me. And unfortunately, this is what happened when I went to social skills groups, is because I was trying to be me, but there was all boys. I had no one to relate to. And that's when I entered the pageants. I wanted a friend that was a girl, and there was all girls, so that was a big difference. Okay, well, it's really difficult to define, but to put it simply, the Actually Autistic movement is a movement in the autistic community that it's really, really radical, but there are radical members in it. And it's composed of people like us, and we want to be seen. We want to be respected for who we are as an autistic person. Like, I would say I'm part of it, and I don't want to be defined by the stereotypical portrayals of autism that are very common. So I would say that actually autistic is whatever you want it to be. For example, people tell me, "Oh, you don't look autistic." So I would respond, "No, I'm actually autistic."
Mm-hmm.
So we just want to be respected. We want neurotypicals to listen to what we have to say.
In episode 12, Joy Johnson shared her views as an autistic self-advocate, behavior specialist, and leader in the Black autistic community. In the following clips, Joy talks about when to target self-stimulatory behavior, or stimming, and why she thinks using functioning labels is problematic.
Stimming is one of those things that's more beneficial, but a lot of times you'll meet, parents that think it's odd, and it's not that they're doing it intentional. Like I always tell people, okay, so I've seen people say that it's getting in the way of their learning, but how would it be getting in the way of their learning? Like when I stim, I actually stim while I'm working, and it makes me more productive. I watch credits because I need like that extra stimulation, because I'm sensory seeking. And so it actually helps me be more productive. So you have to do a cost benefit analysis and think about, if you take that away from them, will they be less productive? Because that's something that they may need because they're understimulated. So unless it's harmful, I would not, because I just don't see, a lot of times that's very subjective. From your view, not you, but from like the teacher's view, they're like, "Oh, it's getting in the way," but you can't see his internal events. You don't know what's going on inside of him, especially when people are non-vocal, and then they take it away from them, and then other behaviors. So you take it away, and then you get aggression instead.
Yep.
You get the other internal behaviors the internal events that you can't see. Frustration, feeling like you have no control over your own body, because people are trying to dictate what they want you to do. So to me, unless it's harmful, I'm like, you need to know, because that's helping us. We're all autistic. And like I said, it's not static. And I feel like it's insulting to call somebody lower functioning, And so my peers that people consider that, a lot of times, to be honest, they can be a lot more, because that depends on the context of the situation, very subjective. So if you look at a lot of quote unquote former Aspies, a lot of us have problems finding employment and keeping employment. However, I have clients that I have that would be considered by societal norms lower functioning, and they've had the same job for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So who's really higher or lower functioning? Because
Right.
they're able to keep employment, like long term. We have more social deficits that as you get older tend to impact you more,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't like it because it's not accurate and it's harmful. And I think that it also, I don't call myself an Aspie. Number one, it's not in the DSM anymore. Number two, I feel like that creates like an elitism, like you're above people when you're an Aspie and people think that you're a savant, and that's not true. Like, not everybody who is an Aspie is a savant.
Episode 13 featured Katarzyna Ciskova, a behavior analyst from the Czech Republic, and one of our former partners. Here's Katarzyna describing how she built a community of parents at her autism center.
And slowly we were developing more and more trainings and adding more trainings. And then at some point we realized there was still one thing missing, which was the motivation of the parents. Because we were just another approach that was telling them what to do and what not to do. And they didn't get the why. So we decided to make those trainings fun and to interconnect the community of our parents. We have a waiting room, and before that, the parents were just sitting there separately. Sometimes they said a little bit about their life, but that was it. And we set group trainings where the parents find out something about each other, and we have a lot of fun activities, and they will actually try those principles live. Why is it necessary to do this and that? Because ABA is amazing because everything is so easy to show real life, and we can come up with activities where the parents try it in a playful way. They have fun and suddenly it clicks and it's like, right, that's why I need to do this. That's how my child feels. And it turned out to be amazing. And the parents are friends by now. So our waiting room is very lively. We have Facebook groups. They keep talking to each other, and they are huge support for each other. Because again, as I said, the community around autism is not small at all in Czech Republic, but somehow people are so separate from each other. And this was a great way to connect them more.
I was joined by Ryan O'Donnell in episode 14. As a behavior analyst and host of the YouTube channel The Daily BA, Ryan explained what behavior analysis is and the different ways it can be applied. Listen to Ryan talk about how modern behavior analysis has evolved over the past few decades.
There's this behavioral researcher in our field, Greg Hanley, that talks oftentimes about things should be televisable, and this sense of anything that we're doing should look great, feel great, and leave people with that perspective. And I think that's a fantastic difference between what maybe if it doesn't feel like that, then it's not modern behavior analysis. Mm-hmm. And the really cool things there too is like the way in which we've built in like choice procedures and things like that. Whereas things used to be closed door, we're going to work with you for 2, 3, 4 hours and help you on your goals. It might not look great. Now there's a lot of like open door analyses where it's, hey, if we're as a therapist not able to help and engage this child, for example, in a way in which they want to be here with us, learning these skills or, whatnot, then we're failing, right? Like we should have these conditions. So it's, I would say, swung completely different.
In episode 15, autism self-advocate and TikTok influencer Timothy Boykin came on the show to talk about his autism and experiences growing up.
I believe I found out around when I was 10 years old. I remember it being the 4th grade, and I would ask my mom, why do I have to go to special classes?
In these next clips, Tim shares what it was like for him to find out about his diagnosis and also what his mom taught him about how to stay safe around law enforcement.
And she said that I have Asperger's, which is a part of the autism spectrum, which which means that I have trouble with eye contact. I can be socially awkward, but my mom reassured me that she loves me and that she will always care for me. Honestly, with my 10-year-old mind, I felt bad because I would usually get bullied a lot and kids would call me the R word. Like, I felt kind of weird. I was like at that weird point, like, wow, I am different than other kids in my school. But later on, I found out that my difference is really nice because I realized that I am very smart. I can do the things that other kids can do. I am very nice to others. I started to look at the good side of everything. Maybe I'm different than others, but I'm like having straight A's in my classes.
How old were you when your mom first had the talk with you?
I believe that I was around the time of my early teens, like 13. It was around the era of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. And she really wants me to be careful, like being like a young man in my teens around that time with dealing with the police. Like try to put my hands up, say yes sir, no sir. Don't make any fast gestures and tell the officer what I am about to do.
Mm-hmm.
She just like told me, hey, whenever you get pulled over by the officer, just try to be okay. Try to be calm.
In episode 16, we brought on our partner from Indonesia, Maharani Putri Kusuma. Maharani, or Rani for short, is the co-founder and owner of Rumah Tiara, an autism center in Jakarta. Rani was joined with Via Mawarni, a former therapist at Rumah Tiara who interpreted from Bahasa to English for us. Here's Rani talking about what moved her to build Rumah Tiara.
Aku mulai Rumah Tiara itu bareng sama 2 orang yang lainnya, Angga dan Hotik.
So I started Rumah Tiara with 2 of my friends, Angga and Hotik.
Karena kami melihat banyak anak-anak yang tidak mendapatkan penanganan yang tepat untuk mereka.
Because we see that so many kids with autism that they don't get proper treatment.
Seperti beberapa klien pertama kita bergabung ke Rumah Tiara setelah mereka tidak mendapatkan sekolah yang dapat menerima mereka.
So the first few clients that we got, they were actually kids that were denied to go to the school because their behaviors.
Jadi beberapa lainnya adalah mereka yang sudah menerima terapi selama 4 tahun tapi tidak memiliki perkembangan yang cukup signifikan.
Or some of them, they've been receiving treatment for years, around like 4 or more, but still they don't see any progress for their own kids.
Terutama untuk orang-orang yang memiliki ekonomi yang rendah di bawah, karena mereka sulit mendapatkan akses penanganan perilaku yang bagus dari lembaga-lembaga yang ada di Jakarta.
Especially with the family that has financial problems, or they come from lower economical families, So they often really, really hard to get the treatment accessible for them because they cannot pay the amount of treatment that is like very expensive usually, especially in Jakarta.
Ya, dan itulah yang ngebikin kita ingin bangun rumah tiara karena kita pengen semuanya bisa tertangani dengan baik.
That's how and why we want to build Rumah Tiara, because we want them to get the same treatment with the other kids with autism.
Episode 17 is another double feature with two of our Skill Corps alumni, Brandy Collins and Crystal Thompson. Both Brandy and Crystal are behavior analysts, and each are founders of their own ABA businesses. Listen to Brandy and Crystal's ideas on how to increase diversity in the field of ABA and further autism awareness in the Black community.
I think one major thing that would help the field would be to have more ABA programs in historical Black colleges. To really go and push that. Like, we get this psychology degree, and there's an emphasis on a psychology degree, but many people know, like, just with a bachelor's in psychology, the employment, like, you're going to have to go on and get extra credentials and certs. But if it were pushed there and people were being pushed in to seek the BCABA and those type programs, something that really gets you into time, something that can put you in the realm where you're learning more about these behaviors, where you can go back into the schools and teach these and assist the schools with learning how to deal with many of the behaviors and developmental delays that come with these diagnoses. That would be amazing. So I think including us more in historical Black colleges, as well as making ABA coursework be a big part of education degrees. You know, how many first-year teachers get classes with children that have so many diagnoses and they're not prepared.
Mm-hmm.
They're not. And then they're judged on their first year of teaching their classroom management based on how well they managed the class, even though they had, multiple kids with multiple needs without the aid. So I think we could really make this field more diverse if more people had an opportunity across all ethnicities to learn more about it and have an opportunity to have more exposure.
Yeah.
And more exposure to the implementation.
Mm-hmm.
I think in addition to there being a stigma, I just think that there's a lack of information. And so because of the lack of information, then there's a lack of resources. And because of the lack of resources, then people tend to fall back on, well, my kid's just bad, or, they just need to, be disciplined or be on punishment, or I'm going to take these things. And I think the reality is that there needs to be just an open forum about what is autism, what are these different autism spectrum disorders, what they look like, and how do we move forward once we know, that my child has this diagnosis, or I'm concerned, or just simply, giving a family information about the developmental milestones or the top 10, signs that your child may have, an autism spectrum disorder. I just think that more information needs to be filtered, more solid, good information needs to be filtered into the Black communities and other communities outside of the white areas.
In episode 18, Haley Moss talked about how her strengths as an autistic attorney have helped her career and why we need to strive for inclusion and accessibility. Here's Haley explaining what a sensory overload feels like, the harm of benevolent ableism, and what inclusion means to her.
It's kind of scary. You feel like everything's tensing up. It's just a loss of control because there's so much going on around you and you want it to stop. And sometimes the first thing, at least for me, I will try to run. I will try to get out of the situation however I can. And the best way to describe what the sensory experience is like is imagine being in like the electronics aisle of like Walmart or Target or some big box store, and all the TVs are on, the volume is on, and they're all on different channels, and I'm going to ask you to listen to just one of them and watch one of them and try to get the message. And then you have all this other input coming in, and it's just exhausting and overwhelming and anxiety inducing and just kind of a stressful scary experience. And that's an experience I could feel with jazz music or just out in the world sometimes. And the first thing you want to do is like, wait, hold up, get me out of here. I need quiet. And it's just something that happens. And what I've learned is I can only fight it for so long on my own. And I've also learned to tell the people in my life, hey, if this happens, don't be afraid. Or, hey, if this happens, I might just need some quiet, but I'll be okay. Or I might not be okay. Let's leave. So it's just kind of communicating with the people you love and know, especially before it happens, or trying to find a way to make things feel safer.
Mm-hmm.
Inclusion to me means that everybody has a seat at the table and is part of that conversation. So inclusion, I think, is one of these things that kind of comes across as a big buzzword now because everyone's like, yeah, we need to have more people, but having us isn't just enough. We need to be active. Inclusion is not just a thing you do. It's something that you practice. It's something that you actively have to be involved in. So it's making sure that you are taking into account different perspectives, making sure that things are equal, that there is equal opportunity, that everybody's voice is respected, accepted, and heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a lot more nuanced, and it's something that we have to continue to strive for.
Yeah.
Ableism is a set of stereotypes and prejudices and attitudes that are negative towards people with disabilities. So it's all sorts of things that end up harming us. So when I talk about benevolent ableism, it's usually something that's meant in a positive way to try to help, but also reinforces your stereotypes and stigmas against people with disabilities. So when I thought of bullying for a long time, I would always say I was never bullied because I thought bullying was very two-dimensional. I thought bullying meant either someone called you names or somebody physically hurt you. But I realized I'd never had that experience, but I definitely was bullied and excluded and part of dealing with people who had ableist views. And sometimes it would always come, and the worst thing for me, especially in benevolent ableism, is it would come from people who cared a lot about you. So it always came from like a friend, but you would be the one friend in the group that wasn't invited to the party. And when you confront them about that, instead of just saying like, oh, it was an oversight, they go, well, it was at this loud place. We didn't think you'd want to go. And it ultimately just reinforces what they think you are or aren't capable of. And it sounds really good. Like, oh, they were trying to be considerate by thinking that it might be too much for me. But you're like, that's a decision I should be making. I can tell you if something is too much for me.
In episode 19, Jeanette Washington educated us about speech therapy, and she discussed her specialization working with dyslexic students. In this clip, Jeanette talks about the different types of people who can benefit from speech therapy services.
Speech therapists, also speech pathologists, can work across a person's lifespan. We work with individuals with swallowing, with feeding, people who have had strokes, and they need their equilibrium balanced so that they can be able to communicate even further, or to be able to express ideas. So it is across the lifespan. I also think about stuttering. Those who are disfluent in their communication or their speaking can benefit from seeing a speech therapist. Someone who has issues with their social skills and they're very awkward in situations with other people, they can benefit from seeing a speech therapist. People who are actors or actresses and they're looking to create a very distinct sound for themselves as they are either speaking or learning a different language or a different dialect, they can benefit from a speech therapist as well.
Episode 20 featured our partner from the Dominican Republic, Mari Carmen Hazuri. Mari Carmen, or Kaki for short, is a behavior analyst and owner of Centro ACAP in Santo Domingo. Listen to Kaki explain how not all areas of the Code of Ethics for behavior analysts are applicable to Dominican culture.
So we have a lot of issues. There are two big aspects of the code that kind of conflict with Dominican culture. One of them is receiving gifts and that whole process. And the other one is with dual relationships. And for some reason, I for me, they're kind of tied together because kind of like if you're receiving gifts from the family, then it might develop into a dual relationship. And like, I get that. But it is a big part of our culture for families to give their teachers and to give the lady that does your nails and to give the person you work with and just like everyone you have constant contact with, to give them a gift for their birthday or to give them a gift for Christmas. Or for teachers, there's like Valentine's Day is a big gift receiving moment of the year. So it's a huge part of the culture, and it's kind of jarring when you have to tell a parent like, oh no, we can't receive a gift, or oh oh, I know you did this mug with my name on it, but you need to take it back. So it kind of, I'm not saying it ruins your relationship, but it kind of it's kind of hard for parents to get, and it is kind of a barrier that you put into that rapport that you've been building with them. And it just doesn't apply to our culture as it does to an American culture.
In episode 21, I was joined by Michael John Carley, a well-known autism self-advocate, author, and consultant. Michael and I discussed the importance of autism support groups being led by autistic people, how to process unemployment in a healthy way, and the need for a comprehensive sexual education curriculum for young people with autism. Here's Michael explaining how people with autism are given a censored version of sex ed.
I think people are too scared of what's going to happen to us. I think that we have a society that is maybe the most scared of sex on the planet, which is ridiculous because of how, privileged we are economically. We allow these hurtful, dumb, mean, scary, punitive legislature into how we rule what basically should be a biological response and a desire for pleasure that everyone deserves and has a right to. Mm-hmm. I can't say enough about how just destructive Americans especially are when it comes to healthy attitudes about sexuality. I think that everywhere on planet Earth, we try to control what is a biological thing with social constructs, with culturally created manifestations. And it's never going to work. Biology is never going to listen to a social construct.
In episode 22, Pamela Fisher talked about music therapy and autism services in Australia. She discussed how musical interventions can help with skill acquisition and sensory regulation, and she even sang for us. In this clip, Pam demonstrates an example goal she might work on to target cognition.
All right, so if I'm singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it might be to help them slow down, but at the same time reach them at their goal of sequencing, being able to follow a sequence of instructions. So I would use some chimes, which I have here. Somewhere over the rainbow way, up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. So with that, I'm not sure if you could hear I was tapping my knee at the same time, like in the break. Mm-hmm. So what I would do with a child working on something like that is I'd get these chimes out on the ground in an order, and I'd get them to tap the floor in between so they could feel the rhythm of the song, of how slow it's meant to be. And so they knew exactly when to hit the next chime. So that whole idea of sequencing, coming down the scale, being slow, being rhythmic, and getting them to follow the instructions given. So
Episode 23 is a double feature with two members of our Global Autism Project family, Cassie Hardin-Scott and Russell Hornig-Rohan. Both Cassie and Rusty began their involvement with the organization 6 years ago as volunteers on Skill Corps international trips. Cassie is currently our Director of Outreach, and Rusty is an autism self-advocate who has helped his teams cross communication barriers thanks to his impressive linguistic abilities. Listen to Cassie and Rusty as they talk about different outreach initiatives that can be carried out while in country.
There are two groups of people that I think are important to start with when you're, especially in a community where there's very limited understanding of autism and what it is. The first group is parents. It's really just, if there's a center that exists, so like with our partners, one of the first goals I want to work on with them before we even go down the social media path, before we go down the path of creating community events is, what are your parents feeling? How are they talking to their, if they have a teenager or young adult, how are they talking to their teenager or young adult about their autism? Are they kind of supporting that teenager or young adult to become a self-advocate? And if not, how do we empower the parents to empower their child to get out into the community and be the self-advocate that community needs? Because I think that's a really important key component, is to get people with autism talking about autism in these communities. So it's not just parents and teachers and, people that don't have firsthand experience, no matter what. I don't know what it's like to be a parent of a kid with autism, and I certainly don't know what it's like to be a person with autism. So I think phase one is finding out where the parents are, and making sure that they're priming their kids, they're prepping their kids to get out in the world and use their voice in a way that makes an impact.
Oh, I know in the Dominican Republic, I was doing a presentation about like how I was first diagnosed with autism and like how autism's really helping me develop bigger and better skills with languages, and also how it's helping me like do well in many different areas, helping me memorize different things, and also helping me become a bigger and better advocate for other people on the autism spectrum in places throughout the world where they don't really have much services. And I always want to help people on the autism spectrum in other parts of the world, especially outside the United States and Canada, where they have hardly any services. Because, I mean, in a lot of poor and underdeveloped countries, there are a lot of places that don't even have autism centers. But in developing and developed countries, a lot of them have autism centers.
So why was it important for you to do that presentation?
Oh, just to show how much I got involved in like outreaching and networking towards all the people in the Dominican Republic on the autism spectrum, helping make sure that the people get all the services they need throughout the country, not just in Santo Domingo, but in the entire country/island.
What was it like for you to be in a place where a lot of the locals maybe haven't even met a self-advocate before?
It was pretty interesting because they got to know more about how I got involved with Global Autism Project, how I'm grateful for my work, and how I feel that my work's really making a difference for people around the world.
In episode 24, autism father Jamiel Owens, host and creator of The Autism Show and co-host of The Ben and Jay Show, shared how he ultimately accepted his son's autism and why he encourages other fathers to talk about their feelings. In this clip, Jamiel opens up about what he wishes he would have done differently when he first received his son's diagnosis.
I'm going to be, the utmost transparent with you. Is quite honestly, I wanted that reset button. I wanted that button to sit there and to say, hey, you know what? This is not right, God. What you did to me is not right. I don't deserve this. I deserve a child that's healthy, that's just regular, quote unquote regular, and doesn't have any of these disabilities. And I wanted to leave. I really wanted to leave. It was very, 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 very hard for me to understand why I am having a child as awesome as my son Shane. I wish I would have realized the importance of me being active in understanding what autism was early, right from the gate. As soon as his mom got on, research and finding different vitamins and studies about vaccinations and things like that, I wish I would have got out of my own head, out of my own mind, and really put forth the effort to match her strength, match her speed, match her motherly instinct. I wish I would have stepped up a little bit faster to actually do that.
Episode 25 features our partner from Saudi Arabia, Yaser Aljaaidi. Yaser is the co-founder and clinical director of Namai Center in Riyadh. Here's Yaser explaining how he started his Give Me a Voice program and the impact this has had on families.
Man training and enabling the child to express his need as a human being was very important for me. So the result of all these things that we decide to create a specific program that will target the ability to talk or to express the needs of the child. And we made it like 3 months, in total 72 hours. And I start going to these organizations and big corporates. We were very lucky to meet a very wonderful guy. His name is Dr. Fahad Al-Aliyan. He is the social responsibility officer in a bank here in Saudi Arabia called Bank Al Jazeera. And he believed in this program and he supported us for 10 kids. And that's where we started Give Me a Voice. With the first 10 kids program finished, Dr. Fahad met with the mothers of these kids, and he was very amazed by the reaction of the mothers or the families of these kids, how the lives of the kids and their parents were changed because of the child now can speak, can express his needs. He's no longer in need to cry, to hit himself, to throw himself on the ground, because now he has a very reliable tool to communicate his needs, his thoughts, his emotions. And that was a life changer for these kids and their families.
In episode 26, autism self-advocates Thomas Island and David Sharif came on the show. Tom is a public speaker and author of Come to Life. David is a job coach for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In these next clips, David and Tom discuss requesting for accommodations at school and in the workplace.
In order for me to have the accommodations that I wanted during my college career, I had to take a very, very long, brutal examination where one of my psychologists would clarify my strengths and weaknesses and the kinds of needs that I would want. So when I went to my undergraduate career at Pace University, I was accommodated with double time for examinations. I was not permitted to use lecture notes during the exam unless if my instructor allowed it. And for all of my classes, I was given a note taker, which kind of means there would be someone in the class taking notes for me, and then they would be put on a website where I can look back at them again. And some of the things that I really struggled with a lot was during most of my class lectures, I missed very, very critical notes that I didn't realize. And then when I had to look back at the note taker's notes again online, I caught them and I needed them when I wanted to prepare for an exam or even when writing my paper to make sure that I am covering all the material that is expected from my instructors.
not only requesting those accommodations, but how you go about disclosing your diagnosis to an employer, be it before, during, or after the interview, is your call, the individual's call, but be mindful of the consequences of doing so. If you disclose during the interview, you might not get the job, and they can't say you didn't get it because you have autism. If you disclose after, you should be able to get accommodations, but be mindful you might be told no. You may have a situation or that the employer can't work with. Like I mentioned earlier, they can't move mountains for just one employee. And if it's reasonable accommodations and cost effective, because employers like accommodations that are cheap or relatively easy to work with, then you have a higher likelihood of staying with that company. And on the same note, being mindful of what you need help with and do your own homework. Have an option, like I mentioned with Disney. Can you give me my directions in writing? Just be patient with me while I ask the same question a lot, rather than just drop it in the employer's lap. Say, I have autism. What are you going to do about it? That's not going to earn you any brownie points with anybody. So the point is knowing yourself, understanding what kind of help you need, and keeping the employer's budget, time, energy, effort, etc. in mind, so you can be a team player and make it easier for everybody.
Episode 27 showcased our Global Autism Project partners, as well as some of our staff members, together on one call. We went live on Facebook to give our partners a chance to share the impact that the pandemic has had on their centers, the current situation in their countries, and some positive takeaways that they've gained from the crisis. Here's Molly praising our partners' resourcefulness and resilience during these challenging times.
That's one thing I think that really impressed all of us and didn't surprise any of us, was how incredible you all were at adapting and making things work for parents and doing telehealth even in places where people don't have computers, doing things via text and WhatsApp and all that. And I think that it just speaks to, we often say about our partners that it's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness. And your resourcefulness was so throughout all of this, and I know we're still in it, but in the beginning, and still is, was just one of the most incredible things to see. And I was very confident that this team, this Global Autism Project family, is going to stay together and weather this. And I think in a lot of ways, because you're used to being resourceful and resilient, it helped in a lot of ways.
In episode 28, occupational therapist Cheryl Albright came on the show to talk about her older brother with autism, the benefits of occupational therapy, and how yoga can be used for children with special needs. Here's Cheryl describing how she applies a trauma-informed approach in her practice.
So I do a lot of yoga-based intervention, and I'm looking for certain things within that: the ability to call and respond, the ability to move their body and copy a motor movement. Maybe I'm combining the two of them and it's dual tasking, and I'm asking the brain to do two different things at the same time. So saying and move your hands, or whatever the case may be. All of those things are addressing more of the central nervous system than they are anything else. My teacher would say that the breath is the key in the door. And so in order to come out of fight or flight, what do we tell? We tell them all to take a deep breath, right? Yeah. I've heard many of you, well, you just need to take a deep breath, which there is some science and theory behind that now, but the goal is to have a calm nervous system. So imagine if, our friends on the autism spectrum were at a nice even keel all day, how much more they can learn.
Episode 29 was a triple feature with 3 mothers living in the Netherlands: Catherine Schafferhof, Inessa Muratovic, and Mojisola Swartes. Catherine is the founder and owner of Stichting Reach, an autism center in The Hague, and she's also a former Global Autism Project partner. Both Inessa's son and Moji's receive services at Reach. In these next clips, Catherine shares her struggles with finding appropriate services for her son. Moji discusses ideas to increase understanding of autism in their community, and Inessa offers advice for other parents.
we've been to, Anessa, you and I have, and Rachel, you actually were there.
Yeah.
We've been to organizations which are supposedly the experts in early intervention and also diagnosing and giving the right tools to help the children get the services that they need. And I didn't hear anything from them that was remotely what I heard from the people in the US. They kind of like set you up feeling like that your child is never going to have a future, so it's very upsetting as a parent, because I know that all of our kids have the ability to learn. I know that all of our kids have a future. I know that all of our kids can do the things that neurotypical kids can ultimately do. I know that we should never give up on our kids, but unfortunately in the Netherlands, it's that they believe that, they're going to be taken care of ultimately. So why get upset about it now? They'll be fine. The government will take care of them. And that's a really great thing, when they're older. And it's kind of backwards here. It's like they don't believe in early intervention until, the age of teenage years, but they have excellent services, teenage years, and they have places for the kids to live, which is something that the US, is really trying to get. So it's just like the complete opposite.
And so in a lot of cases, we as parents and the psychologists and the people that work with our children still need to be the advocates for our children, still need to be the voices for our kids. However, I think what would help, like I said, is for people to see our kids in the community, to see our kids, walking around and being able to accept that, and to being able to say that, okay, this is autism, but that's also autism, and being able to understand those differences and being able to kind of live with those differences, as opposed to looking at our children as freaks of nature, which is what I sometimes often get. And I always say that as a parent of a child with autism, you have to have a Teflon skin so that nothing can stick on you.
Definitely. I mean, the first thing that popped into my mind about this question is that you need to take care of yourself. I mean, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And that somebody told me this like a long time ago, and it's the best thing I have ever heard, because you really cannot take care of your children, and especially not of your special needs children, if you are just at your wit's end and feeling overwhelmed. But that said, I think it's also very important to let yourself feel the feelings that you have. So whether it's, just being very tired, devastated, depressed, anything, what helped me through the very difficult weeks was kind of allowing myself, when I felt down, to have an inner monologue and tell myself, well, you feel like crap. This is it. That's how you feel right now. And that's okay. You may feel like this for this, 1 hour or today or even tomorrow, but then afterwards you're going to pick yourself up. You're going to take a long, hot shower. You are going for a walk, and then you will feel better.
In episode 30, we welcomed Sasha Long, also known as the Autism Helper. Sasha shared her experiences as a behavior analyst and former special education teacher. Here's Sasha talking about the importance of building rapport when working with other professionals.
So if you come in and the first thing out of your mouth could be taken as criticism, you're now like the opposite of a chocolate chip cookie, like you're celery, like no one wants that. So you want to, really take the time to build rapport and to pair.
Episode 31 showcased our partner from Rwanda. Owens Chomjisha. Owens is the founder and owner of Silver Bells, an autism center in Kigali. Here's Owens sharing why she is passionate about working with individuals with autism.
It's amazing. Like I always tell people, whenever we have a 15 years old who started speaking from the center last year. So I always tell people, like, when I see an improvement in someone's life, that is my satisfaction. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Last night, I remember, Leah? Remember Leah?
Yes, I remember him. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So yesterday they showed me his video when he was writing his name. That made my day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I really love what I'm doing because I know I'm bringing hope to the parents. I shared the video with the mom, and the mom said, "No, this has touched my heart. You bring back to me." I didn't know he can write his name. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In episode 32, Brian Middleton joined me to talk about the neurodiversity movement and acceptance and commitment therapy. Brian is an autism self-advocate, a behavior analyst, and host of the podcast, Oh Behave. In this clip, Brian discusses why we shouldn't be trying to normalize autistic individuals.
If there's behavior analysts who are trying to get autistic individuals to behave like neurotypicals, they're wrong. And those individuals in the autism community who have that concern are very much right in having that concern. And we need to listen to them. Now, the flip side to that is there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of rage. And when you allow anger and rage to fuse with you, it narrows your view and it prevents you from being able to see the whole picture. And I'm speaking from experience here. I'm not speaking hypothetically. And my appeal to those people is to please stop judging all of a science because of the bad behavior of some people within the science. That isn't me saying not all ABA, because I know a lot of people get angry when that term comes out. And my response is all ABA is responsible. Because until it is 100% stopped, we are all responsible for those behaviors and attitudes that those behavior analysts do.
In episode 33, we welcomed former basketball star and anti-bullying activist Anthony Ayani. Anthony currently works for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights and travels the country as part of the Relentless Tour, advocating against bullying and educating students about autism. Listen to Anthony share why he started the Relentless Tour.
That's why I started the anti-bullying initiative, because there was a stat that came out, I think about 8 years ago, saying that anywhere between 65 to 90% of kids who are on the spectrum in our country in schools, they are the number one targets for bullies in schools. And that's why I started doing all this, because, I was in those kids' shoes before. And not just like individuals in the spectrum, but all kids who've been bullied. But part of the reason why the bullies go after the kids in the spectrum is because, they're the easiest targets. Because again, I was the easy target because of the things that I said and did, or I was tricked into doing things differently. And I have, obviously, what's so great about the spectrum, Rachel, as you know, is there's so many different kinds of individuals on that spectrum who have many different wonderful characteristic traits. And so, but some of those kids, for example, may rock back and forth a lot. And bullies will see that in the hallways and they'll go after them for it. They may call them weird, or they may call them, why would you do this? Why would you do that? Like, why are you rocking back and forth? But again, that's where it's on advocates to tell those individuals, hey, this is why this person rocks in the hallway, or this is why this person watches his iPad a lot, or this is why he wears his headphones a lot, or this is why an individual on the spectrum can't go to Michigan State basketball games sometimes because it's 15,000 people in this arena and the noises are too much. The stimulus is just overloaded. I've gone to schools, Rachel, where I've said that stat, the 65 to 90%, and then I've told students my story, and then I've had bullies come up to me and say, hey, I was bullying this individual over there with autism because I didn't know what he went through. I just thought, like, this is who he was as a person. I'm like, well, it is who he is as a person, because that's what autism is. It's a characteristic trait. And so now you understand why he can't control certain things sometimes. And then I see those bullies go up and apologize to their victims. And it happened for school I went to. And that was something that I was proud of from day one, but it also told me, hey, these kids want to learn more about it. And once they learn more about it, then they could start having their backs for the rest of their high school, middle school, the time they're in their high school and middle schools together.
Episode 34 featured one of our partners from India, Sangeeta Jain. Sangeeta is the mother of a 21-year-old man with autism, Suvrit. And we've already talked about her older daughter, Shreya, being featured in episode 6. Sangeeta is also the vice principal at Soram, a school for children with disabilities in Chandigarh. Here's Sangeeta talking about some of her son's strengths, the different life skills they're teaching him, and how everyone seems to love him.
So Suvrit has a lot of obsession with strings. So what came to my mind was like, okay, he loves strings. How about choosing all his vocations which involves strings? So, he has the embroidery that he does is with the strings. The weaving loom has strings, and the other things also which is doing, the decorative parts that is doing with the beads and all, which we call bandhanwars, string beads. So that's also with the strings. So he enjoys, I think. He plays with his strings, he works on it, and also we are teaching him his life skills, which are very important. His taking care of his room, dusting and doing all that thing, washing utensils, mopping floor, cutting vegetables, helping in kitchen. So his curriculum is more revolving around these part, but he can read and write also. He can type on computer also. He can say certain things. He can write about it and tell us. But then again, as I say all those things, he needs supervision. He 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 wants someone to be by his side, and we're trying and working on fading away that supervision part also. But he's pretty capable, I would say. But as I always feel that you need to keep short-term goals as well as long-term goals with him.
Mm-hmm.
So his smile is very beautiful. He has his meltdowns. He has his anxieties. Because he's non-verbal. So, to say it all for his attention, for sometimes for his, when he's wanting to escape and he doesn't want to do is he gets sometimes into self-injurious behaviors, which is very difficult as a mother and as family to deal with it. So, but anyways, I always say that when he is good, when he smiles, I think we forget everything. So, and it's such a fun to be with him. And I think he is the binding force between all of us, like my daughter, husband, and myself. Everyone loves him. That's what I'm amazed. Like whatever he does is loved by everyone. He has some charisma. I don't know what it is, but he's loved by everyone.
In episode 35, we hosted behavior analyst Dr. Megan Miller. Megan is the founder of the Do Better movement, a professional development initiative for behavior analysts aimed at developing humane, culturally informed, and compassionate interventions. Here's Megan discussing one area where behavior analysts can do better.
But we're trained to look at function and look at why challenging behavior might be happening, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, it seems like that's all people are attending to nowadays. Like, as long as they can figure out what's happening that could be making the behavior persist. So the child might get out of doing a task, or they might get attention, or they might be given their favorite toy. If those clear patterns exist, a lot of people think if you just remove that thing, you don't let them out of the task, you don't give them attention, you don't give them the toy, that would be enough to shift and see a decrease in the challenging behavior because it's no longer effective for them. And that does simplistically work in quite a few situations, but there's also a lot of situations where that's one piece of what's happening. And there's a lot more going on. There's skill deficits. There's things happening in the environment to trigger the challenging behavior. There's emotion, like being able to navigate emotions and really figure out how to properly respond when things aren't going the way they want them to. And all of that kind of stuff doesn't get assessed and doesn't get taught or targeted. It just seems like people think it will magically happen. If we don't provide the reinforcer, if we don't give them the why of why they're engaging in their challenging behavior, it'll just stop. And like I said, I've had clients, of course, where that is the case. It was that simple. But if I assessed them, all of those other things would have been taken care of. They didn't have skill deficits. They could communicate just fine. It was just this environment that was set up to reinforce the challenging behavior. Unfortunately, for a lot of the cases that most of us have, especially nowadays with more and more people accessing services, they're not as simple as that.
Episode 36 featured Robert and Nadine Schramm. Robert is a board-certified behavior analyst, a former special education instructor, and the author of The 7 Steps to Earning Instructional Control. Nadine is an applied behavior analysis and verbal behavior consultant, and she leads their Knospe ABA office in Germany. In the next clips, Nadine talks about the special education system in Germany, and Robert discusses one of the 7 steps from his book.
It is definitely much better than it used to be, when we first started. But Germany is still in Europe a country with the highest percentage of special ed schools. So, like in the US, where all the kids get to go to the same school, in Germany, many of them with a diagnosis and who have learning deficits who don't fit into the regular picture, they go to a special school, smaller groups, more teachers. Because we get to work in the whole country, we are seeing tons of kids in very different schools. And it's very different from what you're used to in LA or in the US in general. It's a lot of more babysitting, where the kids are they're trying to get through the day, but there's not that much teaching going on because it's a very often overwhelming situation for the teachers in the classroom.
So that would bring us to step 3. Now that we've shown the child that we are ultimately able to give or not give their favorite things or their favorite activities based upon their behavior choices, and we've shown that being with us is more fun than being alone, that the swings is great, but the swings with Robert is hysterical. He's laughing and tickling and jumping out of the way and pretending he got hit in the face or making funny faces and making me laugh. I don't want the swings. I want Robert in the swings. So how do I get that? And once the child is trying to pull you into their fun, now you're going to find that you're in a better teaching position, because rather than trying to pull the child to learn from you, they're pulling you, trying to get more from you. And as they're trying to get more from you, you're now in a position of high probability where you can give an instruction. And there's a reason why the child would want to follow that instruction. So if a child is taking me and saying, come, push me on the swings, and I say, sure, touch your nose, or sure, give me a high five, they're going to be much more likely to go, oh yeah, or yeah, because I want you to do something. Under the desire for engagement, they're going to be more likely to cooperate with whatever simple instructions I give them.
In episode 37, our CEO Molly came back on the show to talk about all things leadership. Here's Molly describing how her leadership style has evolved over the years.
So as I started the Global Autism Project, and when we started running trips and we had people, taking people out, it was like, I thought that leadership was just, you're in charge, you listen, a very simple. And what I learned through doing that is that that's not what it was, right? It wasn't just like, you're in charge, you're in the position. And then that kind of further perpetuated the idea, I think, where it was like, you just you're a leader or you're not, right? And then I sort of realized that no, it's a skill set and there are skills that you can learn. And then I started to kind of learn more, I don't know that I've read pretty much any leadership book I can find, any website, any Forbes article, any Harvard Business Review, obsessed with it, right? It's just an interest. And so then I thought, okay, yeah, it's a skill set. It's something that we can teach others to do. And what I have come to learn at my advancing age here, what I have come to learn 17 years in, and really in a way like 25 years in of leadership training and development, is that yes, it's a skill set, and there's no amount of skill that's going to create you as a leader, right? Like really leadership is an inside job. And I think that's what I have come to learn about leadership, is that it's an inside job, and you need to really look at, where am I not even a leader in my own life? Where are things not working or not working as well as I want them to? Where are things falling apart around me? Where are things, and really it's yours. It's something that, you decide that you're a leader. You decide what your leadership looks like, and the rest kind of falls into place.
Episode 38 featured Stephanie de Kramer and Russell Botting from the UK. Stephanie and Russell work together at Auticon, which is an IT consulting business that employs over 200 adults on the autism spectrum as IT consultants. Stephanie is one of them, and Russell is her job coach. Next, Stephanie and Russell discuss how they work together at Auticon, and they offer advice for other employers who are interested in being more inclusive and neurodiverse.
Yeah, we work directly together. So Russ, being a job coach, it's so good because he's like an extra layer of advocacy. So every time we get posted on a new project, he's there to stick up for me, to say, oh, these fluorescent lights are too bright, or hey, she needs this extra bit of software on the computer, or hey, she didn't understand that thing you said, could you explain it again? And I could say those things. Russell always gives me the option if I want to say that for myself. It's not that the job coach speaks instead of you. It's just I find it so reassuring to have someone else on my side. And it does feel like they're on your side. It's an extra layer of someone that knows how to translate. It's like having a translator if you were in another foreign country. Like, you wouldn't want to go to a foreign country without a guide, would you? So it's like if I went to Japan, it'd be really cool to have someone that could speak both Japanese and English to say, hey, look over this way, or hey, watch out, this part's really steep. This part might be difficult, so mentally prepare for Mount Fuji, whatever mountain you're going to climb. I think, look at the skills. They might not impress you in person. They might not make as much eye contact as you want them to, but if you really look at what they can do and their attention to detail and their perseverance, there's a lot of, and loyalty and honesty are big qualities with people on the spectrum. I think people that have gone this far in life, that they're hardworking. So I'd say give them a chance and maybe do something that's a skills-based task, so it's not completely a verbal-based interview. I think that might give them time to shine. There's different opinions on that, of course. Russell, what do you think?
Yeah, that's true. That's what we do at Auticon. So as you can imagine, interviews are basically a social construction of how how we now generally assess someone's competence in a job. But actually, it's a test of selling skills, which individuals with autism, for various reasons, will find harder because, again, it requires theory of mind and knowing kind of what other people want to know, how much detail to go into. But what is really important, actually, what you want to know in an interview is, can that person do that job? So technical tests, task-based kind of interview processes are probably a better way to go. And actually, can you actually test someone's competence at that skill rather than their ability to talk about their competence or their abilities, I guess, is probably a better way to go. But I guess it's also about, when you, as an employer, if you think about the employees you already have and finding out, are you doing enough to support them from a diversity perspective? So it's about kind of opening up, surveys and questioning whether you are doing all you can do for individuals, and making sure that you are making reasonable adjustments when necessary, and encouraging people to disclose at the earliest stage as possible if they have a autism or neurodivergent condition, so that you can put in place any reasonable adjustments that allow that person to excel or perform that role to the best of their ability, I think.
I would like to add that people on the spectrum are generally very nice people. And that sounds super cliche, but people that have gone through crap stuff in their life generally are empathetic, and they do understand struggles, and they do their best to work with other people, and they'll be a team player in their own way. They might not come to every drinking session or every after work party, but they'll love to support and be supportive of other people, especially other people that have gone through struggles. They'll know internally what it's like to have to fight through something and work a lot harder than everyone around you, and just to kind of keep your head above the water socially.
In episode 39, we welcomed Dr. Temple Grandin. Dr. Grandin is well known for both her pioneer work as an autism advocate and her lifelong dedication to animal welfare. We discussed a wide range of topics that day, including increasing employment for adults, fostering curiosity among children, staying balanced during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the classification of autism under a single umbrella. Listen to Temple's advice on how to do advocacy work effectively.
One thing about advocacy, I don't care if it's autism or it's in the animal field. You want to make sure that the things you advocate for do good things in the field. In other words, get out of the office and find out what's going on with people working in the field. And I'll say that for animal stuff, autism stuff, food safety stuff, I don't care what it is. Unfortunately, sometimes you've got people advocating and, sitting in offices and they advocate for some law and it has an unintended bad consequence out in the field. I've seen that happen. So find out what's really going on the front lines. That it doesn't matter what it is that you're advocating. And the other thing is pick out something relatively targeted and where you'll be more effective. Then it's sort of like someone says, well, we got to reform the entire educational system. Well, where would you start? Let's start out, maybe we need to demonstrate again that an art class and some hands-on classes really help the students. And then I'm going to tell them about this study, that a Nobel Prize winner was much more likely to have a creative hobby than just a regular scientist. That's an actual study. Tell people about that sort of stuff. But figure out something relatively specific. Like, okay, adults with severe disabilities of various types that are getting abused. Okay, that's something relatively targeted that this agency's working on. Mm-hmm. They're not going to worry about the programmers out in Silicon Valley. And where they may need to learn more about autism is on their marriages. That's where they will need it. But it's sort of like it'd be pretty hard to work on both of those at the same time. Well, I just I want to see people get out there and do everything that they can do, and figure out how to make things better.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing I'll suggest, you want to advocate about something specific, leave the politics out of it. Mm-hmm. You'll be a lot more effective. You basically have to decide what you want to do. Be a little more targeted.
Finally, in episode 40, behavior analyst Jenny Lorca from Early Autism Services shared her experiences participating in Global Autism Project's Leadership Academy online. Leadership Academy is our 6-week online course that has been proven to be effective in increasing time and task management, decisive action, integrity, and effective communication. In this clip, Jenny describes what she's learned about setting boundaries after doing Leadership Academy.
So prior to doing the Leadership Academy, the virtual Leadership Academy, I was the kind of leader that really wanted to jump in and solve problems for people. I would work 7 days a week. And, many of those days I would work maybe 10 to 12-hour days. And because I thought that that's the way that you are a leader. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be available at any time, just to be able to help people solve problems, because that they need that support. However, through Leadership Academy, I started to see that setting boundaries for myself so that I could, have those times for self-care, actually would make me a better leader. It would make me somebody who is more present for my team. It would make me someone who actually then could turn around and coach them to help themselves. There was a lot that I learned about the fact that you need to help people help themselves. They need to be coached to figure out their own answers, because then they have ownership of those things in their lives and they can be proud of themselves. So they won't be proud of themselves as much if I solve it. So that really changed my leadership style. It also taught me to, now I take weekends off from work. And when I get back on Monday, I am just that much more ready for my staff to help and support them.
And that's a wrap. As I was reflecting on these past episodes from 2020, I was overcome with immense gratitude for our community. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing your stories, to our listeners for your continued support, and to our team for putting it all together. Special thanks to Linda, our podcast intern, for joining us at just the right moment when we needed you most, to Tremaine Ebanks for video production, and to Mark Aliana for audio and text editing, and just all-around moral support. Of course, none of this would have been possible if Molly hadn't believed in my little idea last year. From all of us at the Global Autism Project, we wish you a happy and safe holiday season and hope you can spend some quality time with your loved ones in some shape or form, even if it happens to be through a screen. We'll be back on our regular release schedule on January 7th in 2021. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. You've been watching Autism Knows No Borders. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think in the comments section. Click here to watch this interview in its entirety. You can also find us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in each week for engaging conversations of how people across the globe are inspiring change and building community. Thanks for watching. Take care.